Good evening. Welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. This is July 17th, 2018. It is 6:30 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone, if you have not already done so, to silence your cell phones. And let's see, Madam Clerk, we have roll call, please.
Councilmember Vega.
Here.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Present.
Councilmember Mosby.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Janelle Osborne. Here. Mayor Bob Lingle.
Here. And if you please rise, remove your hats if you're wearing one, for the invocation by Pastor Kathleen Puntar.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and the community. I appreciate this opportunity to pray for our City Council and for Lompoc. I just want to share a quote Martin Luther King Jr. said, "A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for what is true." This has been paraphrased as, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Let us pray. Almighty God, we come before you this night with gratitude and praise. We are blessed with liberty because brave members of our armed forces have fought to keep us free. Today, a new generation of military personnel serve. We thank them for their service and sacrifice, and we ask you, O God, to bless them with strength and protection. We also pray for our justice system. Ours is a nation pledged to justice for all. And though our system has its imperfections, it is much better than most of the world. We pray for all who serve as police officers, prosecutors, defenders, and judges. We ask you, O God, that all these public servants will be vigilant, discerning, and wise. Lord, we also pray for all who struggle in our community. We pray for those in the riverbed and for the homeless on our streets. We pray for the children and the youth of Lompoc. We ask for your direction in our community, our state, and our nation. We ask for your wisdom to be with this city council this night. We pray for your blessing to be upon all gathered here, and we ask that you would honor those who seek to lead with compassion, justice, and fairness. Help the City Council to hear clearly the voices of concerns and to especially listen for those without a voice. We ask particularly, O God, that you would help them to speak and to act about the things that matter. These things we pray to you, O God. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So in the Lompoc record, you may have read over the past week or so where the city of Lompoc received an award for financial reporting excellence. And tonight I'd like to take an opportunity to publicly recognize our finance department and the individuals responsible for this. This is a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting has been awarded to the City of Lompoc by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. It is a comprehensive annual financial report. This certificate of achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. It is an attainment, this attainment represents a significant accomplishment by a government agency and its management team. So, Brad, where is Brad? Where is Brad? Okay, I guess they ran out. Oh, well, here comes Dean. Okay. I know, so. Okay, well, we just told them what the award was all about and how it's the highest honor and everything. So these are the two individuals, and Brad is going to say it's really this individual, and I think we'll all recognize that Dean is the person that was really fully responsible, not fully responsible, but the backbone behind this. So you guys want to say a couple words about your achievements? And by the way, thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet.
And congratulations.
So this is actually a team effort by the whole entire city and also the finance department, but the primary person who led the effort to regain the status of a CAFR was Dean. So he led the charge. And so that's why Dean is up here. And I had to run back and get him, so sorry.
Okay.
We're also, as you know, right in the middle of doing a financial system conversion, which almost has us start over from scratch for this year. So Dean's been actively working on converting what he did for the last couple of years to get a CAFR to using our new financial system. It's almost like starting over. So it's going to be a challenge this year to do that, but both because of the first year that we're in our financial system, but also we're challenged to have another award as of June 30th of 18. So thank you very much.
Okay. Dean, you want to say a couple words?
No, I just wanted to say you're right. It's a team effort, and Melinda's not here, but Melinda puts a ton of effort into making sure these financials kick off. Thank you. And Brad and Bob Cross. It's definitely a team effort, and we have a really good crew, and I'm really honored to bring it back to the city.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So if anyone is here for item number 12, you can go home, have a nightcap, and go to bed, because we're going to pull item number 12, and it'll come back at some future meeting. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'd like to share that our fire department recently received a note from Santa Barbara County Fire Department Operations Division Chief that was sent to all regional chiefs. It was also thanking Chief Curis and his crew for all their outstanding response and help with the holiday fire. And he puts holiday fire in quotes because it's just an odd name for the fire. The personnel performed extremely well, he said, in very difficult sundowner wind conditions and extreme fire behavior on the initial attack. They appreciate our continued support in their operational area, and they and the community are very grateful for the quick response of our crews. So just wanted to share that with you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the City Manager? Okay, we're going to, I'm sorry. Councilmember Mosby.
Yeah, recently in the paper it was referenced that we are not staffing all of our public safety positions. Could you fill us in on a little bit what the freeze is about? Are our patrols down, or what's going on there? If you could help.
Clarification of where we're at with vacancies in public safety. We have 3 officer positions that are held as part of negotiations that were done to enable salary raises in this budget negotiations. So those are the only 3 officer positions that are being held vacant because of negotiations. We did actually hire a police officer trainee, so we do have somebody that's entering the academy now, so that we do have someone in the pipeline that can come out and if a position opens, that can be filled. Otherwise, that person can be going into dispatch or something like that where we have a need. Some other vacancies that we do have in the police department are we have a records technician position that is being held vacant. We have 2 dispatch positions, but they're not being held vacant. We can hire. We know that there's a need to hire dispatchers, so we are able to hire there. We do have a dispatch supervisor that's being held open, and we have a jail supervisor that's being held open. So that's a total of 8 vacancies, 6 which we're holding because of the budget and the need to balance our budget in this 2-year fiscal cycle. But some of those, as I said, were negotiated. So I hope that clarifies that there are no vacant police officer positions other than the ones that were negotiated to hold open.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on to public comment on the consent calendar. This is public comment on the consent calendar only. Okay, seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. Consent calendar consists of items that are generally considered as routine and will be passed with one motion and one vote by the council, unless a council member chooses to pull an item. Does any council member wish to pull an item? Councilmember Starbuck.
I don't wish to pull, but I will abstain from voting on item 6.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, with Councilmember Vega.
Yeah, I move that we accept consent calendar.
Okay, let's see, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? This is with Councilmember Mosby abstaining on item number 6. Okay, let's vote. Starbuck, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, staff presentations and requests. I guess we have none. So we're going to move on to item number 7, which is a financial presentation on retiree benefits for the 2018 Comprehensive Annual Fiscal Report. And this is Mr. Wilkie.
Sorry about that. One of the items on the consent agenda was a staff report regarding our upcoming financial statements and what will be presented differently starting in 2018. This presentation is about that staff report, as well as the item to request affirmation of paying our annual CalPERS unfunded liability payment in one lump sum in July, so we do some savings as opposed to paying for it over the next 12 months. So this combines those two because they are both about the same type of activities. One's from the reporting side and one's from the how can we save a little bit of money. So this is about our, it says CalPERS unfunded actuarial obligations for retirees. It's a little bit more general than that because it's not just our CalPERS pensions we're talking about, but it's also our long-time retiree healthcare program that has been negotiated over time. It's both of those. We provide health care for employees and retirees through the CalPERS health program, so that's why I have CalPERS in the title. So this is going to talk about our reporting standards. General Accounting Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is GASB, has done a couple of pronouncements. One was GASB 68, which has been in place for a while, and a sister pronouncement, GASB 75, that's going to be in place this year. One thing I'd like to point out is the reporting requirements under the two GASB pronouncements, although they're related to pensions and to healthcare, they're absolutely not what we have to pay CalPERS for our annual contribution rates. Those are based on different valuations that CalPERS produces after their year end. So to some extent, they're apples and oranges. So first thing I want to talk about is GASB 68. It talks about CalPERS pensions. Last year, I did a presentation on this, breaking down the citywide pension obligations versus safety and miscellaneous plans. So this is kind of combining everything together. Going back a little ways, before 2015, before the financial statements of 2015, GASB 68 had been reported under GASB 27. which reported mostly the same information, but as part of the notes of the financial statements, as opposed to what GASB 68 did, which is takes the net pension liability and puts it on the financial statements, the balance sheet of the financial statements. What that does is it creates a whole different mechanism for reporting, both on the financial statements, and even though GASB 27 used to be reported in the notes, we still have a note presentation in the financial statements after GASB 68, and in fact, it's probably doubled in size compared to what it used to be to provide additional information. One of the reasons it's doubled in size is we're fairly unique in California, where back in 2003, CalPERS did an initiative to solidify a lot of the plans that had small memberships. They pooled all the plans that had less than 100 active members at that point in time. In 2004, we only had about 70 people in our safety plan. So it's pooled with other safety plans that are like it. And our miscellaneous plan had more than 100 people in it, 100 active employees in it at that point in time. So our miscellaneous plan is wholly our own. We're not pooled with anybody else. That has some advantages and some disadvantages, but the nice thing about the miscellaneous plan is we've implemented different tiers, and California has implemented the PEPR tier. All of those employees are in one plan. So as more and more people move to the newer plans, the rates for that plan are melded together. So we see the benefit of that throughout the whole plan instead of just in isolated plans that happen in our safety side. Let's see. In the miscellaneous plan, we have 4 different tiers of people who are either receiving benefits or will be receiving benefits. One of those tiers is for anybody who retired before May 14th of 2005, which was when the current first tier became in existence. And then the safety plan has 3 different retirement plans, tiers, and they actually have 5 different plans because police and fire in tier 2 and tier 3 are separate, and their tier 1 plan is combined police and fire. We, the city, and the state of California have done a lot of things to mitigate the long-term costs of our pensions. One of those things was acted upon tonight in the consent agenda, which was to do a lump sum payment in July for our unfunded liability payments for the year. What we could have done is paid those payments monthly over time, but we would have spent about $170,000 more by doing it over time than paying it in this month. And all that money that we would have spent in those 12 months will be recovered through the payroll process during the year. So by the end of the year, we're at the same place we are now, but having saved about $170,000. The 2-year total that we're going to save as part of the budget is over $300,000. One thing we did way back in 2011 was we negotiated different tiers for our miscellaneous and police and fire groups. It was done somewhere between August and November of that year. And then in January 1st, 2013, the law PEPR, which is Public Employees Pension Reform Act, was enacted to create a 3rd tier. And that 3rd tier also applies to miscellaneous safety, police, and fire. One thing about PEPRA that is going to be beneficial for us going forward is because we have a tier 2, what PEPRA calls classic members, the classic membership that people would go into if they come to our agency from another agency and are in CalPERS, they'll be in one of the less expensive, less benefited tier 2 plans rather than going into our tier 1 plan. We're only one of about 60 agencies that across the state that did this. So if somebody goes to Santa Barbara, they have still the richer plan. So somebody's already in CalPERS will go to that richer plan, which creates additional long-term liabilities for their plan. We cut that off as of 2011, and from here on out, whenever we hire somebody that's in CalPERS, they will be part of that Tier 2 program. And as of June, for our whole entire membership in the city, police, fire, and miscellaneous, we have over 40% of our active members that are already in either Tier 2 or Tier 3 plans. So long term, that's going to be beneficial to the city as more and more people go into those plans and those people start to retire. We'll see those benefits over time. Back in the time when PEPR was put in place, the expectation was maybe about 50% of employees after 10 years would be in PEPR. We're ahead of that by quite a bit, and that's going to be beneficial in the long term to the city. This is a summary of the savings that we will realize because of the vote to prepay our annual contributions. And it just shows you by plan how much we're going to save. Tier 1 safety is our legacy program that's the most beneficial for employees. So we're going to see the most benefit of prepaying that, about $60,000. The Tier 2 fire and police and Tier 3 fire and police are all of those are a newer plan. So they're virtually 100% funded. So the dollar amount that we can save is very small. It's one of them $17 and the biggest one is $100. But over time, the membership in those groups will grow and we'll be able to realize more savings in those plans because more people are going to be retiring out of Tier 1 and we will have people moving in Tier 2 and Tier 3. For miscellaneous, all the tiers are in the same group, so there's no differentiation between that, but we will realize about $100,000 of savings in the miscellaneous group. And with a hand wave, about 60% of the miscellaneous is an obligation of the general fund, so we'll be able to save roughly $60,000 there. So our total savings in the general fund from doing this is about $100,000 or so. And as you see, I put down last year's numbers of about $144,000. So over time, as the contribution rates that CalPERS imposes increases to meet their increasing phased in of the discount rate change, those numbers will keep growing, those discounts will keep growing because we'll have a bigger number that we have to pay, and a percentage of a bigger number is a bigger savings. Now I'm going to switch over to our OPEB. This is going to be new for the 2018 financial reporting cycle. The requirements for GASB 75 really mirror what we are doing with GASB 68, except for the fact that it's on non-pension retirement obligations. It replaced GASB 45, so we still are reporting. We're just be reporting on the balance sheet instead of in the notes. Now it's going to be on the balance sheet and in the notes. Very similar to how the notes are and how the financial statements are for GASB 68. One difference is that the majority of the GASB 75 obligations are healthcare benefits. So the city contributes to a plan outside of the CalPERS pension plan into a CERBT, which is the California Employees Retirement Benefit Trust. It provides for us to pre-fund our obligations. Back in May of 2009, just when I was getting here, the prior finance director proposed and the council adopted us to start pre-funding. So back in 2008, our funding ratio for our OPEB obligation was 0. We had no funding at all. We were just doing a pay-as-you-go basis. What the benefits are for GASB 75 for other post-employment benefits is primarily health, dental, and vision programs. The benefit is vested over time, so somebody has to be here for at least 15 years to be able to get this benefit. And the benefit is cuts off at a certain period of time. So when somebody goes into the Medicare program, the benefit drops substantially. So the nice thing about that is as our pension plans have gone into Tier 2 and into Tier 3, our Tier 1 pension plan allows for retirement at age 55. Tier 2 allows it at, I'm talking miscellaneous here, Tier 2 allows it at 60, and Tier 3 allows it at 62. So as the normal retirement age grows, then the time that this benefit is provided for the typical retiree gets smaller and smaller. So the benefit becomes smaller and smaller as well. The CRBT is a IRS sanctioned Section 115 trust, so it can be counted towards our obligations, and it's counted as part of the GASB 75 reporting. CalPERS for our pensions, they have inside actuaries who do all of our reporting for us for both contributions and GASB 68. They don't do that for our GASB 75 requirements or for our CERBT contribution requirements. So we've contracted with Bartell and Associates, a well-known actuarial firm that does this across the state, and we've contracted with them to do both of our actuarial contribution valuations and our GASB 75 calculations. Several years ago when I started working with Bartell and Associates, John Bartell, at that point in time, and it's still probably, I think it's very much truer now, described their plan as a modest benefit because it has a fairly late starting time, it cuts off when Medicare happens, and the fact that our pension plans are squeezed in that time frame. If somebody retires at 62, they have at most 3 years to be able to participate in this program, and that helps limit our obligations and our liabilities. Oops. Like our pension program, we've done several things to mitigate our obligations within OPEB as well. I mentioned earlier that the City Council approved pre-funding in 2009. Since then, the city's annualized return in our plan has been over 9%. That has allowed us to pre-fund about $2.6 million of our obligations through the CRBT rather than having it paid from city budget numbers every year. One really fortunate thing is it allowed us to reduce our contribution rate for the 17-19 budget by about 50%. This is a graph kind of showing what the plan has done through our CalPERS CRBT. The line is our asset value, and the bars down here are what the total amount that we've contributed. So this space right up here is just investment earnings. That's money that does not have to come out of our budget to pay for benefits. So now on to the reporting impacts of the two plans. One thing I mentioned at the very beginning is that our reporting under GASB 68 and GASB 75 is somewhat separate from what we have to do for our contributions. So for CalPERS contribution valuations, we have a 30-year amortization period for what is the unfunded liability. That doesn't exist in the GASB 68 and GASB 75 world. All of our gains and losses on the plan are typically amortized over about 5 years rather than 30 years. So there's going to be a fairly substantial difference between the two types of valuations that we're doing based on that one amortization change policy difference right there. The other thing that happened with GASB 68 in 2015 is generally people are talking about our obligations are now part of our balance sheet. It's a liability in our balance sheet. That's absolutely true. But after 2015, the liability changed. So between 2015 and 2016, our liability changed. That change has to flow through our income statement. That can create substantial changes between year to year because we have a non-cash effect. Well, it's non-cash for our books because the investment gains or losses are at CalPERS. So we're taking the investment swings at CalPERS and putting into our financial statements. So over time, that's going to create some challenges in how to look at our financial statements and comparing year to year to see how our financial statements are doing based on our budget. So it's kind of like depreciation, where depreciation is a non-cash expense. But for the budget purposes, we talk about cash capital outlays because we look at how much money we're spending on capital. For the financial statement purposes, we look at how much the expense for that capital outlay costs us in any particular year as we depreciate it. Same thing's going to happen now with the gains and losses that are on employee benefits. CalPERS announced their investment returns on the 12th this month. So they had an 8.6 preliminary return for 2017-18, which is great news. However, CalPERS is just like us. They have to issue financial statements. They take about as long as we do. Once their financial statements are done, that's when their actuarial valuations can start to be done. So the valuation that is for the month that just occurred, the valuation is not going to be issued for another 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. So the 11.2 return that CalPERS experienced for the year of 16-17, we are expecting to see the valuations for that year in about a month. And then that valuation is going to be applied against our contributions in the following year. So the contribution rates based on those returns are 2 years later. So looking at the 8.6, that's not going to even affect our contribution rates for 2 more years. So everything's lagging from that point of view. And the other side of it is, as you'll see, I have measurement data up here as opposed to fiscal year. The 8.6, which was announced for 17-18 just a couple days ago, is not going to be even applied to the measurement period until 18-19. So there's a significant lag for both GASB 75 and 68 and for our contribution evaluations. The good thing is we have had, you'll see, we had 13% gain, a 17% gain, 2 years where it wasn't very good, 2.4 and 0.6, and then another 2 years where it's above the discount rate. So we've had 4 out of the past 6 years where we've had discount rates and returns in excess of our discount rate. So that's good. A 0.6 rate really hurts. And that 0.6 rate is what was the driver for our valuations for this year. Switching over to GASB 75, GASB 75 is very tied in with what the health premiums are from year to year. And for whatever reason, the health plan that we use to do the valuation has been jumping all over the place. So in the premium year of 2014, the single employee rate that we used was $543. That was a 15% drop from the year before. Then in 15, it went up by 10%. Then it went up by another 9%, and went up by 18%. Then it went down by 10, and for next year, it's going to go back up about 9. All those ups and downs, averaged over those 6 or 7 years, is about a 3.5% increase, which is roughly what our valuation is expecting for inflation purposes going out. So it'd be nice if all those were 3.5, but that is what has happened with the CalPERS rate plans. So I probably should have started with a slide. I'm sorry, it's a little bit small, but this is had GASB 75 been reported the way we're going to be reporting in 2018, this would be what we would be reporting on our financial statements. And I went backwards to when we started doing 68, so there'd be some comparisons. I realized about a year ago, we did a presentation on just the CalPERS pension liabilities, and a number of about $70 million was out there that for that point in time. And that's roughly what we had for the 6/30/16 valuation. If you take away the CalPERS, the OPEB obligation. But the number I'd like to kind of point out here is the total that's going to be reported in 2018, and going backwards what it would have been if we were reporting both of these together. Back for the reporting year of 15, we had about $36 million in pension obligations for the miscellaneous plan, about 19 for safety, and we would have had 17 for OPEB if it was reported that way. So for a total about $73 million. Jumps to $78 million in the next year, $90 million in the year after that, which was that's the 2.4% gain that we had made that grow. And then the $97 million is growing because of the 0.6% return. From an overall perspective, the rates have gone up about an average of about 8%. The liabilities have gone up about 8% a year over that time frame. The one nice thing about this is the OPEB obligation has gone from 17.6 down to 14, and it should go down to about 12 next year. So we're actually seeing a beneficial reduction to the overall gain because of that OPEB. One of the questions I had, and give me a moment here. I mentioned earlier that GASB 68, 75 are not our contribution valuations, but one of the things that is mentioned with the contribution valuations is how well funded are the plans. So from the point of view of our contribution valuations, the miscellaneous plan back in 2015 had a funding ratio of 75%, and safety had a funding ratio of about 71%. For the next year, 2016, the miscellaneous plan went down to about 70%, and safety went down to 66%. The next 2 years are not yet available because we haven't gotten the valuations yet. That drop is primarily attributable to the 2.4 and the 0.6 return. So as more years come in that include the 11.2 and 8.6, as we continue increasing our contributions required by CalPERS, we should see some beneficial increase in those funding rates. CalPERS saw, from a system-wide perspective, their funding rate went from about 68% to 71%, just because of the 8.6% gain that they had this year. They have to do valuations for about 3,000 agencies, and every agency is different, but that's their number for the system as a whole. We'll get our numbers in about 15 months or so. I think I only have one more slide left after this. GASB has been on our financial statements since June of 15. GASB 75 will be on our financial statements beginning in June of 18. This is just kind of summarizing what the timing difference is, and that's all I got. So there's a lot of work we have to do to implement GASB 68 back in 15, and there's just as much work that Dean will have to do for the financial statements of 2018 to get GASB 75 in. So that addresses the 2 staff reports that I had included in the package, and if you have any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Vega.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Oh. Okay, any questions for Mr. Wilkie? Okay,
Great.
surprise?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for the report. Okay, we'll open this up for public comment. Well, that's okay. No, let her have it anyway.
Deb Andrews, Mission Hills. And could we cut the lights so we could see that better, that picture? A citizen brought our attention to the tennis courts at Ryan Park. I went over to look at them, and as you can see, it's in very bad condition. We've had other citizens come and talk to us about conditions at the parks. It made me think that the city government has gotten very complicated, very expensive, and citizen services at the same time have deteriorated. Was the city of Lompoc first incorporated as a vehicle to serve jobs, pensions, and benefits, or was it created to serve citizens? I have friends in Lompoc that have lived here for decades, and their conversations go like this. Lompoc used to this, Lompoc used to that. Quality of life, things they used to enjoy, things that were important to them living here no longer exist. The dog show not coming is just the latest example. I urge you to flip this thing on its head and prioritize citizen services. Have someone from Sandy Springs, Georgia come and present to you how they have privatized all their services. They have 8 employees and safety personnel. Everything else is privatized. They're a city of over 100,000 people, so it would be something we could do here in Lompoc. Please give it consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if you hold off 1 second, we're going to have oral communication right after we receive this report. There was no comment on that report. So let's just, if I can have a recommendation to receive the report from Mr. Wilkie.
I recommend we receive the report from...
And do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, all in favor of receiving the report? Okay, that passes. Okay, now we're going to go to oral communication.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, staff, Alice Milligan with the Lompoc Hospital Foundation. Each year, the foundation sponsors a color-thon, which is widely accepted in the community, and I'm here tonight to ask, I've been told there's a rumor around that we've also held it at the River Park each year, and we start to advertise this event in July. We hold it in late October, and before we start to advertise it, I wanted to clear up. I've been told there's a rumor that the park may be closed for the balance of the year, and I wanted to clear that up before we start to advertise the event. So I hope that's not true. It's a park that's used widely in the community. It's something that's enjoyed in the community. And of course, our color-thon is widely accepted in the community and widely used in the community. So I wanted to bring that up this evening. I know it's not on your agenda, and I don't know if it will be on your agenda in the future.
Okay, Ms. Milligan, I have talked to the acting city manager, and she either has or she will be contacting you about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Council members, Mayor Lingle. My name is Steve Bridge. A few months ago, I had the honor of being appointed to the Parks and Recs Commission. During the last couple months, I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot from the highly qualified staff. During that period, we've worked on several items which will be coming to the council in the next month or two. They will include single use of Thompson Park, processing for the commission to handle smaller sponsorships, and exploration of a dedicated nonprofit. I'd also like to point out that the Parks and Rec staff seem to work tirelessly under a workload that seems impossible. The Lompoc Parks and Recs facilities are under stress. The resources available to support proper maintenance is lacking, and it appears that all Lompoc City-funded capital projects are on hold due to city financial conditions. As we go into the next budget cycle, you're going to have some difficult decisions to make, and they may include increasing support, or perhaps it's going to include eliminating some parks if they cannot be maintained. Before the next budget cycle, I think it will be important, and I ask each of you to do a personal survey of the parks. Walk each and every one of them and ask yourself if you could maintain those parks with the resources we're providing Parks and Recs. I don't think I could, but in closing, I would also like to point out that regardless of the significant workload, the Parks and Rec staff continues to work tirelessly, striving always to provide the best they can for the city of Lompoc. It's an honor to work with them and learn from them. So with such a dedicated workforce, I think it's incumbent on each of us to recognize the value of our parks and recreation facilities and honestly scope what we can do. Let's not go through a process and then the day after it's done say, well, that was good, but we're not going to do that. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to continuing to work on the commission.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I call this Widows United, and it has to do with the city of Lompoc billing. Last summer, about a year and 4 months after my husband passed away, and he happened to have been a police officer in this city for 25 years, I decided it was time to have everything in my name. So I went to all the financial institutions. I went to the gas company before I went to the city of Lompoc, and I said I'd like it changed from John to Sandy because all the bills, are in the mail's name. So no problem. Went into the computer, and now my gas company comes in Sandy Healy's name, not John Healy's. Went to the city of Lompoc, and I asked them to do the same thing. Could they do that? No. In order to have it in my name, I'd have to fill out a new application. I've heard of 2 other widows that the same thing happened to. One of them told there was an application fee. I never got that far because I was furious. But why, I've been at the same residence for 40 years. Do I need to fill out a new application to have the bill come in my name?
Thank you. We'll check into that. Next, please.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, folks at home. Wanted to chat with you guys tonight about an issue that's been bugging me for the last couple of years, and it's been on the back burner. I've just been wanting to come and chat with you guys about it, but there was a recent article in the Lompoc Record that touched on this subject, and it renewed my interest. And I wanted to talk to you tonight about chickens and about allowing families to raise and keep a small number of chickens with guidelines and that sort of thing. Now, it's my understanding in most of the surrounding cities, if not all, chickens are allowed, but Lompoc is not. And I struggle with that concept where we are an ag city, much more so than Santa Barbara, than Santa Maria. It seems very anti-ag to come in and not allow families to raise these chickens, and even with guidelines and things in place. My wife, Alex, grew up with chickens. It was a really important thing for her, and I would love my daughters to have that same experience. Chickens and raising them, according to Alex, and we have friends that have chickens, but it teaches a kid a sense of responsibility and compassion and kind of a knowledge of where their food comes from that is really hard to replicate in any other situation. It's a lot more than a dog or a cat and that kind of thing, because the hens are giving back a food source, and there's that understanding of where your food comes from. And it's something that I would love my daughters to experience, but I know there are plenty of folks in town that do have chickens, but it's not something that is currently allowed, and I think that's something we need to change. I know it was discussed in 2015, I think, and I think it was a 3-2, it was a split vote, but it did not pass, unfortunately, and I would love for that to be brought back to the table. The zoning ordinance is being finalized, and that's coming up in the next few months. I think this is a topic that needs to be plugged into that and at least discussed, if not moving forward with that, because it seems like it's high time for that to happen at this point. With other surrounding cities already having that implemented and us being an ag town, it just seems to make sense. Thank you for your time, and please consider that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next, please. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close all communication. And we'll bring it back to item number 8, which is appointments. The first appointment is to the Economic Development Committee. We have 3 positions open, 1 at large with a term expiring February of 2022, and 2 associate positions, term expiring February of 2020. We have 1 applicant, is Mr. Tim Becker. Councilmember Osborne.
I move to appoint Tim Becker to the at-large position ending February 2022.
Okay, and do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 5-0. See, I don't see Mr. Becker in the audience, is he? No, okay, well, congratulations, Mr. Becker. The next one is to the Human Services Commission. We have 1 term expiring December of 2020. This is Councilmember Mosby's appointee. Councilmember Mosby, would you care to make an appointment?
And appoint Mark Ashamala.
Okay, it's been moved for Mark Ashamala. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Mr. Ashamala is in the audience. Would you like to say a few words, or go? Thank you. Okay. He said thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 9. Item number 9 is affirmation of approval of solid waste service charges for the fiscal year 18 and 19. This is Ms. Wall.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight I'm bringing to you the affirmation of the approved solid waste charges for the year 18-19. What we're doing is we're recommending that you approve the rates. We did take it to the Utility Commission. Utility Commission recommended not to affirm the rates, however, to proceed with a new solid waste rate study. I'd like to give you a little bit more background on, just a summation of the background, because you've been through this now. This will be the 5th time you're going through this, that when we approved the rates, well, let me even go back further, that way back in 2010, City Council approved the solid waste utility to borrow internally, because at that time we were having a negative balance. In 2013, Cal Recycle awarded the utility a $1 million financing opportunity to install a mandated landfill gas collection and control system. So the solid waste fund was awarded with a $1 million financing. The total amount of the project was $1.5 million, which the city had to pay for the $575,000 into the project. On June 3rd, 2014, it was the rates were adopted to have a 3.6% increase from 2014 to 2018, and this would be the last utility rate increase for the solid waste fund. Additionally, during the time after we had adopted those rates, the CalPERS had implemented changes in the city's contract. So we not only had an increased cost in CalPERS, but an increased for payments for the unfunded accrued liabilities. Some things also that you need to take note of is the fact that the construction cost index has increased by 2.7% this year. And well, that was in 2013, and this year was 3.4%. CPI was 2.3%. When the items were adopted, the following things were the goals set by the 5-year rate. And the first one was to collect and provide for funding for the landfill gas collection system, repay the city's operational loan, replenish reserves, collect funding to meet operational cost obligations, and provide for capital outlay obligations beyond the landfill gas collection system, and collect and provide funds for the closure, post-closure reserve. And just go into a little bit of this with the goals. The first goal was to provide for the landfill gas collection system, which we have met. We repaid, the second goal was to repay the operational loan, and that was met in the 16-17 year. Replenish operational reserves, which we have done. Collection and provide and meet operational obligations. Now, this one, I need to go into a little bit further detail about it because in the last budget, we adopted 2 positions that were approved through the biannual budget to support the utility and support the landfill gas collection system and other requirements handed out through the state. Again, some of the things that I need to mention are the CalPERS retirement contributions increased, and our UAL increase, so that is approximately $68,000 per year for the next 5 years going on. And the collection and provision for capital outlay, we've started to collect funding. One of the items that concerns me is the $250,000 that we projected we're going to need for the storm drain improvement, although we haven't gone out and actually done the study on that. That was our final, an estimate of that project, that it was going to be approximately $250,000 for about 5 years or more. So looking at the rates that we're asking for the resident that has a 65-gallon can, this is going to, the 3.6% is $1.11 per month increase. And those that have 95-gallon cans, it's $1.47 increase. The total amounts we expect to capture from that is $242,000 approximately from that increase. The increases for the landfill, that goes up and down according to the uses of construction and other things going on. So I'm only going to be looking at the $242,000. So our increase for personnel, I went back and looked at the number a little bit further to get an exact amount. And we're looking about $161,000 per year for those 2 people that we hired on for, it's a solid waste program analysis to keep track of our state mandated requirements and a heavy machine operator. The unfunded and accrued liabilities and the CalPERS contributions increasing just for next year, that's going to be about $68,000. So the total of that is like $229,616, and that's the estimate, which if we don't have that increase, that's going to eat away at our reserves and eat away on our reserves for continuing to the future. Other items that we have to think about is that the average cost for operation and maintenance is, if you do just a 3%, it's about $260 a year increase. That's not included in that So we get 242,000 that we're estimating we're going to get for new revenues, and we're spending 229,000 for just those two positions and related CalPERS costs. That would give us a balance of like 12,000, and any kind of operational costs that increase, we'll be using reserves for. That doesn't include any cost for the storm drain project that we don't know the exact cost what would be. And we're estimating $250,000. That's quite a chunk of change. And the requirement deposit for the land. So other costs, just in operational costs, not really in capital. You know, we're looking over the amount that we collect, and we'd be draining down. So we'd be draining down approximately 500,000 plus a year, just in operational cost, not looking at capital. So I do recommend that we go ahead with a study to find out where we're actually going to be, but I am asking council to review the 3.6% increase and approve it. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Wall? Councilmember Starbuck.
Ms. Wall, a few years ago, we implemented paying to dump up there. We've never received a report on what our income has been. I know that I go up there with a small load and it's a $20 bill. What is our revenue from that? We don't have any report on what we've received or what we expect to receive on it.
On page 5 of this report, it just shows the difference in the actual landfill revenue increases. I apologize that I didn't give you a base number to start out with, but it does show on page 5 the various amounts that we have received for the landfill revenues. So in 2017, we received an additional 136,000 than we did in the prior year. Again, anytime you put items into the landfill, you're looking at the fact that there are landfill costs we have to pay, and the less percentage we have in that landfill, the more. And we have to set aside money every year for that.
We've been doing that for years anyhow, but
yes.
I guess one of the questions would be, instead of spending 20 to go to the landfill, what if we were to lower it to 10 and we could possibly half again as much or double plus on that? If we're going to study water running off of it, maybe we could do something that would help clean up alleys and also help our income on it, rather than bumping everybody another $1 something on their utility bill with this. It seems like it's a lot of money that goes in the landfill up there, plus these rate increases, and we're still asking for more.
If I may, the rates for individual loads are tied to the tipping fee there. So if we reduce the rate for individual loads, the tipping fee would have to go down, and most of the tipping fee is fixed, because the majority of the volume that goes into landfill is from collections within the city, from the collection of 12,000 cans a week. So you'd have to reduce that too. So by reducing it from 20 to 10, you'd cut your revenue in half, probably, even if you got more collections from individual loads.
Councilmember Vega.
Melinda, it seems a little bit out of kilter to ask for the increase, but I do recommend the study. It seems like a little bit backwards here. You know, I understand you want the increase, but the Utility Commission here is recommending that we have the studies to substantiate the storm drain project to get a little bit closer of an estimate. Is that what I'm hearing?
They recommend a study. I'm not even including the storm drain cost into what I'm saying that we're increasing in our costs. So I'm just looking at those two positions that we had to require to be filled, and that basically eats that 3.6%. So, and we need those for the state requirements so that those reporting requirements are filled in I'm sorry.
I was just I just want to kind of reiterate, one of the things that Melinda mentioned up front is that the 5-year rate setting authority was based on a study that was done in 2014. So the 3.6% rate increase is already based on a study that was produced and accepted by the council. All we're asking to do is affirm the rate. What the Utility Commission, I'm assuming, is asking to do is to have a rate study for the next 5-year rate setting authority. So they're two different things. So one thing that I would want to make sure of is that the 3.6, if it's not affirmed and we do a rate study, the next rate study finding could be something totally different. And it may have to take into account that we didn't do one of the rate setting authorities that was available, which affected how we did the rates for water and wastewater. If you remember, water and wastewater had huge rate increases comparatively to had they been done in the 2007, 8, 9 period when we didn't have any rate increases for those two utilities. So waiting a little while may impact how much the new rates would be recommended at. So just want to make that clear.
You know, if I could ask one question here, Brad, you know, we continuously have to add infrastructure and personnel to keep our city going. Are we looking ahead to seeing any more state mandates that are going to increase, that we're going to have to add more personnel, or we're going to have more maintenance on our equipment? I see what you're saying here as far as we need to pay for what we have, but the foresight involved here, it'd be nice to know if there's a little bit of insight there, or if this is the foresight that you're perceiving and projecting why we need this increase at this time.
Well, the 3.6 is not even projecting future mandates. The 3.6 is to keep our reserve levels at the 3-month recommended number. Keith Quinlan is here from the utility. I think he might have some insight on what the future holds from the state passing down new regulations regarding waste diversion and the things that keep adding. One of the things that was done as part of the approved budget in 17, 19, I keep saying 15, it's already 19, but one of those two positions was hired to exclusively take care of mandated programs, the reporting for those mandated programs. We have to have one person taking care of all the programs that the state has imposed on us and last forever. So Keith has some more information. So
appreciate it.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. Keith Quinlan, Solid Waste Division. Some of those mandates we have before us are the mandatory commercial recycling that was approved at the state and is administered by Cal Recycle. An additional one is mandatory organics recycling that's on the horizon that's going to require us to start composting food waste. So we have these mandates coming in front of us. Another one is SB 1383 that's also forthcoming. So these are unfunded mandates put forth by the state and required of jurisdictions to implement. And as Brad mentioned, we do have a new staff member on board to assist us with program implementation.
So Keith, you're telling me that all these mandates, they're going to cost us money. There's no cost savings for the city. These are all cost savings just to meet our mandates. Is that correct? That the state is imposing? I mean, none of these composting of food or anything like that, it's all going to be at an additional cost, correct? Just to meet the state's requirements?
That is correct, yes.
Got you.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Councilmember Mosby.
What's the cash reserve on hand?
So My apologies, hold on a minute, please.
2.36 million.
Yes.
Yeah, and our 90-day requirement is 2 million. And that, the difficulty I'm having right here is because the numbers that we have are from December. And I know we've had difficulties getting the Treasury reports out and the current numbers. It makes it difficult for me to make a decision. We have 6 months of numbers that aren't out to tell us exactly where we are right now. I would like to be able to see everything when we only have half of the last fiscal year's numbers in. So it makes it difficult for me to make a decision to tell me exactly what position we're in. And right now, I know from my calculations, this is probably the best that the solid waste enterprise has been. I only went back to 99, but I think we're in the best position that we've been fiscally since 99 with this much money in reserve.
Yes. And the handout I gave on the graph that shows that the revenues and expenses, they reflect items that were adjusted and carried over. So these are the revised budget numbers. And if you look at the budget numbers, we're basically even. The revenues and expenditures basically wipe each other out. They have expended less than anticipated, but their revenues are down a little bit too. And we've done this graphing for several years. It's been pretty consistent over the years. And since the solid waste rates don't change per individual, except when we do a rate increase, the number of customers stay pretty level. You can estimate that the revenues are going to be pretty much on target. The expenditures, of course, are under the control of the solid waste department, excuse me. So they tried to watch their funding to make sure it's correct. But the only thing that I can really tell you is that we've given them authority to expend about the same amount that they have coming in.
Right, it's just, what I'm getting at is, previous years, we're almost within 30 days of seeing the numbers, and right now we're half a year out behind, and we're not able to see. I appreciate your projections, but it makes it difficult for us to go out to raise rates. It makes it difficult for me to go out and raise rates when I don't have current numbers. We only have half of the fiscal year, and I know what you're anticipating with the revenues. I just think that a lot of this stuff is a little premature. I think there's something with the new accounting systems making it a little difficult.
The problem was with the old accounting system, and that's why we're behind, is because we couldn't get September closed until December or January. And then implementing the new system. Our old system was basically dying on the vine, and it took several attempts to get September closed.
I just hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from. If I'm trying to make a determination of raising the rates to all the public, I'd like to see more current numbers of where we are, and maybe we are a little premature. I mean, you had a computing system that's put us 6 months behind, but it's difficult for me to make a decision on that, and maybe we need to wait a couple more months until you can get some more current numbers to see where we are. And currently, we have $2.36 million in reserve, so you're not running out of money. And I think 2010, what did Mr. Wilkie say we were? You had to borrow $900,000, I believe. So we went from borrowing $900,000 to $2.36 million, so it looks like we're in pretty decent shape right now.
We're in better shape.
Right. I mean, you have and I know you have some other items coming out. You have 2 new employees and other mandates that are coming along. But I'm just thinking maybe it's a little premature that we don't have all the numbers. I don't know. I tried to make all the utility commission meetings. I know this was lengthily discussed last utility commission, and I don't know, well, I didn't see any of the other council members there, but there were a lot of numbers that came out of good conversations, about 2 hours of discussion on where we were, where we are anticipating going, and why they came up to the conclusion of making a suggestion for a new rate study. And that is a lot of the unfunded mandates that are coming down the line was one of the reasons for suggesting that.
Yes, but we do know that these costs are coming. And I think Steve gave an estimate of $250,000 for the food recycling amount that's not included in this. So we have several components that we know that's going to increase. And as Brad said, that if you don't do the 3.6%, we might have to be talking 10 to 15% down the road if we.
But again, what I'm just saying is it's difficult when 6 months of the numbers aren't here for me to make this movement. So I don't let some people ask some other questions.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Weil. We'll open this up for the public. Public comment?
John, excuse me, John Lynn, speaking first on behalf of the Utility Commission. We listened to everything you just heard and quite a bit more, and we concluded that, number one, there are adequate reserves in place. If you pass that out, Stacy. In addition to the $2,360,000 shown in the staff report, there's also $1 million due from the state currently, and there's also $1.3 million that was moved into a special reserve account in 2016 for the stormwater program. So in total today, the utility has $4.6 million. The stormwater program is kind of a big question. Back in 2016, when the money was set, when the $1.3 million was set aside, it was assumed that that would be the cost of it. And some of us who talked about it back then thought that was quite a lot of money for some percolation ponds. The current budget, the unapproved capital budget, calls for $2.2 million. Tonight you created a $70,000 savings by buying a smaller bulldozer. Good job, everybody. And there are just umpteen questions. Now, I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference at 3.5%. if we wait until we have good information rather than acting now when we have extremely incomplete information, especially considering our goal was to have a $2 million reserve, and we have about $400,000 in capital requirements in this budget. So as we stand here this evening, we have about a $2 million excess reserve once the state pays us back, and I hope they will one of these days soon. I'm sure that won't be with interest. So my recommendation and the committee's recommendation was that we enter into a new rate study where we can calculate all these variables and then come back to the public and say, well, we're going to raise the rates for this reason, or we're not going to raise the rates for this reason. And one of the things I noticed in this lookup, and you'll see it down there on item 5, was the change in the cost of running solid waste. But in 3 budgets, it's gone up 39%. I'm not familiar with any other city department that's received a 39% revenue increase. And I've given this to you all before. So there's only 3 copies, but that's the city document that shows the reserve fund that was established. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. What's your desire? Councilmember Mosby.
Is there a $1.3 million stormwater reserve fund?
I believe what Mr. Lynn was mentioning was about 5 or 7 years ago, a significant project was done to reevaluate the total tonnage that can be put in the landfill. And in 2016, Cal Recycle approved that study that was done, which required us to add to our post-closure closure fund by about the $1.3 million. So I'm thinking that's what he's talking about, but I'm not sure. There's no fund set aside for water, stormwater. It's for the post-closure fund. So.
And the other $1 million from the state, that's at the loan reimbursement or via loan, right?
Yeah, it's a 10-year loan at about half a percent or so. So it'll be repaid about $120,000 a year beginning this coming fiscal year probably.
So that would bump our reserves if it comes in approximately $1 million?
Less the 120 that we'll be paying out this year to pay off the first year debt, yeah.
So roughly 3.3 million, 3.2 million?
Well, like you said earlier, our financial statements won't come out until probably December, so I'm not going to commit to any number until the financial statements come out. So, but I would like to mention that while the cash reconciliation process has been delayed by taking care of new procedures with Munis, we are still reporting and recording monthly collections at both the landfill and through our billing system. So we are up to date on how much we have received in revenue. So the fact that we're down, we're expecting to be down at the landfill, even though the cash report's not done yet, we're pretty confident that $108,000 deficit, unless something changed in June, will probably come and be part of what's in the budget, in the financial statements come December. So just as an example.
You have a $108,000 deficit, but you have $3.2 million potential in reserve once you get the $1 million back from the state. Right? That's what you're saying?
That's just one example. We haven't even started the closing process to look at things that are non-cash. So you're right, we have a lot of work to do between now and December, and we have a lot of work to do to get the cash reports to you through June. So,
when can you have more solid numbers so we could see?
December.
Because it's just, again, the numbers seem to be growing, and I can appreciate that we have new unfunded liabilities, but I would just really like to see more solid numbers.
Sure, I understand that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Osborne.
So this study was done. It was a 5-year period. It was recommended. We're in the final year of recommending the 3.6. As staff recommended, it's $1.11 per month for 65 gallons, and it's $1.47 per month for a 90-gallon trash can. Goal 4 and 5 require the additional resources, or we won't meet them. Goal 3, while currently achieved, will not be sustained, and best practices of maintaining a reserve of 25% of operating costs will erode over time. It doesn't matter what the new rate study looks like. That's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with trying to stay ahead, and having adequate reserves has been a problem for us long term. We need to stop thinking adequate, and we need to excel at getting out ahead. Our responsibility as council members is to maintain a healthy financial status for all of our entities. So I personally think we take staff's recommendation, the 5-year study, we move forward on this increase, and we trust their predictions that this money is going to be needed. It was needed 5 years ago when the prediction was made. We're in that final year of that study. There is prediction that it and even more is still needed. So ignoring something that potentially stabilizes us until we know the next set of rate studies and what those potentially look like is important. And I don't think ignoring those and saying we shouldn't raise something because we don't have the exact numbers in front of us, when our staff's job is to do those predictions. They got an award for doing good predictions and paying out ahead and producing good reports. So I trust our staff when they come to us and say, to maintain and stay ahead of and improve, we need to follow through on this rate. So I personally believe we take staff recommendations and move forward on the final rate increase for this previous study.
Okay, Councilmember Mosby, you may have a comment, but was that a motion?
I move to accept staff recommendation.
Okay, and Councilmember Mosby, I'll get to your comment as soon as if we get to the discussion on here. So does Councilmember Osborne have a second on her motion? Okay, I will second her motion so we can get to discussion. Councilmember Mosby.
The difficult part with overseeing the enterprises is you need to have all the numbers in front of you, because you must charge what cost of service is. And we do have a policy that allows us to go cost of service plus a 25% reserve. That's why studies are done, and that's why you've moved methodically through this. And that's why you have all the numbers that you can get in front of you. When you're sitting in a position right now and you have $3.2, $3.3 million in reserve, we're over and exceeding our reserve policy. We're over and exceeding. Right now, we're talking about potentials down the road, and that's what these other studies are for. But when you get into a position of charging more than cost of service, that's what the delicate balance is. And that's why I'm asking to see all of the numbers, and I think we need some time, and I think Mr. Wilkie agreed with me as well, that I believe it would be prudent for us to look at all the numbers. Granted, they're having a little computer glitch, it seems, to get everything down there before making a determination, because if we do another rate increase, we're charging actually potentially more than cost of service, which we're not supposed to be doing.
Councilmember Osborne.
I did not hear that we had that level of reserve. That information came from someone and was not confirmed by our department. So again, meeting the 2.36 million, that's meeting our requirement. That's just barely meeting it. So again, I understand the need to have accurate numbers, and I absolutely respect it. I did not hear staff said that they agreed that we needed to wait for it, because again, their job is to do predictions based on what's currently going on in the current funding. So again, I respect staff's recommendation and moving forward on the rate increase in order to maintain and potentially not fall behind. And if the new rate study says that we have met and we don't need to do any more increases, that's wonderful. But again, there's a reason those studies are done and the recommendation came forward from staff.
Councilmember Mosby.
I believe, was it 2013 or 14, that established a policy of 25% reserve, and it is identified in here that we do have that, and we have met the goal of 25% reserve. So, staff, if they want to bring back and you wanted to change the reserve policy to have more in here, other than that, you're charging more than cost of service. And if you're charging today for something hypothetically down the road, that is more than cost of service. So I think we've met our goals. There are potentials down there. That's what we're looking at with another rate study down the road with goals that are a little more concrete. But currently right now, I think we need to defer this until, December, until we have all the numbers. Right now, we only have about 50% of the numbers in front of us. And it's tough to make a decision. This could go up, it could go down. We don't know. Well, you have 50% of the numbers in front of you. Again, the tricky balance is to not be charging more than cost of service. That's why they did implement a 25% reserve policy. So they did have that ability to float.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, if I may, I just wanted to clarify that future capital improvements are part of cost of service. So, future costs can be counted as cost of service. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Staff, council? Okay, we have motion and a second. Let's vote. Okay, and that fails 3-2. Okay, so we are not going to implement the 3.6% right now. Do we want to authorize staff to go ahead with as recommended, the rate study? Councilmember Mosby.
I would like to make a recommendation that staff come back to us in December. I believe as soon as you get all the numbers, and to bring this report back with the rest of the numbers, and we can make a determination at that time.
Mr. Mayor, may I just add something? Remember, several years ago, you approved these increases. This decision tonight is actually an amendment to that previous resolution, so we're going to have to bring back to you at the next council meeting a resolution amending that resolution that authorized this increase.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Mosby.
I was asking you to come back. Is that something that come back in December? Defer this until we get the rest of the numbers?
No, we need to do that immediately, because otherwise the increase is going to be happening, because there was previous authority to do that. So we need to have something formal to undo that.
Councilmember Mosby, are you complete?
Yeah, I'd be willing to make the motion that the city attorney has said needs to be done. Do we?
Well, it's going to happen automatically. Yeah, it's going to happen automatically.
Okay.
So we don't need a motion on that.
Again, I'm still asking for it to be postponed and come back in December. Is that a motion that's allowed to be made?
You're asking for what to come back in December?
Yes.
No, you're asking for what to come back in December?
To have this recommendation by staff to come back in December with all of the numbers.
that's certainly something that you can ask staff to do. But in addition to that, at the next council meeting, we're going to be bringing to you a resolution to undo what the resolution 59-2014 did.
So Councilmember Mosby, I believe, I'd want to put words in the attorney's mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong. We are going to undo this resolution, so there will not be, if we come back, Councilmember Mosby, if we come back, there will not be a pending 3.6% fee increase, because we're going to undo that resolution. So bringing back that staff report, it wouldn't make any sense. Is that correct, City Attorney?
Well, we could bring back in December another resolution to put that 3.6 back in.
I say okay. Okay, so Councilmember Mosby, that's what you'd like to do. We need 2 other council members to agree with you. Councilmember Starbuck?
I'll go ahead and second the December review of this, but I had the other question is, when do we anticipate starting the rate study that we budgeted for this?
I think we'd have to talk with Solid Waste, who typically does the lead on that. I know we've already talked to the rate consultant that we typically use, so it probably wouldn't be something that would take a lot of time to get going. We've talked preliminarily about when and how to do that, but we haven't set up a purchase order or any kind of thing to do a contract with the vendor yet.
Would it be possible to have it done by December also?
If it is done by December, it would probably be done in draft form, but as a operation that is controlled by Prop 218, we'd also have to go through the public hearing process, which takes, I'll just use water and wastewater as an example. We started that in 2011, and we didn't get the rate hearing until August of 2013. So
I guess December would be out of the question then.
well, we might be able to get a draft for you, but then the draft may then give us more questions about the validity of some of the assumptions of capital costs for, say, the storm water retention project that would have to be done.
Well, I mean, why couldn't we go ahead and do that then, Mr. Wilkie? I mean, that way we're at least going to look 5 years out in December at that point, so it would behoove us to have that information available at the same time to discuss.
Yeah, I just don't know how long it would take to get the information to them. And as I mentioned in my presentation, we're basically starting from scratch to do our CAFR. So getting our CAFR done by December will be a very challenging thing just in and of itself. And we would be working with Solid Waste on the study, but that would be kind of layering on top our financial system replacement project, which has 2 phases that are being implemented this fall, the CAFR rebuild and getting caught up on our cash reconciliations, as Councilmember Mosby talked about. There'd be a lot of work, there'd be a lot of challenges, but we can definitely start that process and see what could come back. And I wanted to mention what, kind of going back to what City Attorney mentioned, is what would be brought back next time would be just a temporary rescission of the 3.6 so that it could be implemented later, which is exactly what we did with the water rates last time. We didn't cancel them, we just deferred them. So that's what would be done as part of the next time, next meeting.
Mr. Wilkie, let me ask you a question. If we bring this back in December with all the financial information that Councilmember Mosby would like, we would reinstitute this resolution. Would this fee increase then be retroactive back to July 1st, which it was supposed to have been going into? Or would it be effective?
Well, there's 2 parts of it. The 3.6 is actually on tipping fees at the landfill. So when people are paying their money at the landfill, you really can't go back to those and ask them
Correct.
for more money back. So it's really a council decision, but I would presume that the cleanest way of doing it would probably be prospectively from that point on. So,
Councilmember Mosby?
I agree.
Okay, so we have a second on your request, and we don't have a third, but I will give you the third just because I believe this 3.6% is necessary, and I believe it's going to be proved to be necessary. So to bring it back with the information in December, so you have a third on that. So, Councilmember Vega.
Mr. Mayor, it sounds like Mr. Pannoni said it's coming back anyway the next meeting. Is that correct?
It's coming back to rescind.
It will have to come back to be rescinded.
Two different things. The thing coming back at the next meeting is putting on hold the 3.6 increase. The thing coming back in December is whether or not to take that hold off.
And I understand that. I just want to make sure that in the first thing you said, it would have to be rescinded, but now we could put it on hold is what's going to happen the next time because the other thought process came up. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 10. Item number 10 is consideration to affirm the water utility services charges. And this is the Ms. Wall show tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Tonight, we'd like to just give council another opportunity to look at the water rates because we suspended the last year's rates for both the base and for the variable rate. We did also take this to the Utility Commission, and the Utility Commission's thoughts were this does not need to be done. The Finance would like to present it to you to have the fifth thing out of to get enough monies into reserves for future capital projects. Again, the goals in 2013 were to be in compliance with our debt service covenants, to eliminate the annual operations losses, replenish reserves, and establish a funding opportunity for necessary capital replacement projects at the end of the 5-year rate study. Does go into discussion of what was happened in the past, that the consumption rates were affirmed at 15% for the first year and the second year, and at 7.5% in year 2015. Nothing was done in 2016 or 2017 for the consumption rates. The base rates were adopted all the way up to July of 2016, but no rates were adjusted at that time. Overall, items that we'd like you to consider in this is the fact that consumption-wise, customers did save approximately $4.7 million over the life of the rates. Just wanted to talk about some of the things that are upcoming with the water fund, and again, that's the CalPERS requirements for the unfunded liabilities that we have. And sorry. I just want to go over the goals that we had adopted in 2013. The fact that we wanted to be in compliance for their debt service, and we were able to do that. And we're in compliance of all of our debt service, and even with the refunding, we've met that goal, so that's really good. We eliminated the annual net operating losses. That was met in 2014. Our next goal was to replenish operating reserves, and that was met in 2015. And we talk about meeting our 25-day reserve. That has been met. The number 5 is the item that we still need to work on, and that's establishing funding opportunities for necessary capital replacement projects. Basically, the items that we were looking at is that phase one, the replacement program is complete, that we're getting costs related to preliminary design, engineering, construction, and about $975,000, and that we have additional $1.35 million approved for projects related to capital items. There were items listed in the capital improvement program that are long range, and if you have the money up front to pay for these capital items, you save the ratepayers a lot more money in the long run. So at this time, I would ask council to consider affirming the rates that weren't in place at the end of the water rate cycle.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Wall? Councilmember Mosby?
Our cash balance is, according to the Utility Commission report, was $6.9 million is our current reserve. Well, that's December 31st, 2017. So I'm assuming that's still growing, but we don't really know where that stands currently, right?
No, sir.
Okay, so we're 6 months out on that number as well.
That's correct.
And we have $6.9 million. And I did investigate to see what the projects were. I mean, that was the 4-inch line replacements. And we have 7 years more of those replacements that were, how much was the last project?
I don't have that information.
$800,000, $900,000 approximately, $1 million. So it looks like we're doing very well in this department.
When the study was done, some of the capital outlay items that were also considered was the rehab of the water distribution plant. And I realized that the water supervisor that was in charge at that time is no longer here, but there were several big projects that he had coming up in 10 years and throughout the 32-year cycle that he was estimating. So the amounts that we were asking for in the budget considered all of those costs. So it's not only the lines, but it's the water treatment plant and the distribution system, so.
And I know we have the capital project list that we haven't approved yet, so we don't really know what those are. I did talk with the engineer, and they have a couple projects that they like to do, but they've, you know, we did a lot of them in approximately 10, 15 years ago. There were a lot of improvements that they really brought it up to speed with new pumps and such like that. So, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Vega.
Going back to the solid waste, I think I concur with Councilman Mosby that we're a little bit out on numbers. I think before with the Utility Commission recommendations in the past years, I think what made them rethink some of these rates on behalf of the people out there to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. The infrastructure and the capital improvement project is meant to keep things from happening in an emergency. All we want to know is we want to make sure that these projects that are projected actually are implemented. That when this money goes into the enterprise funds, we're increasing revenues, but there's no guarantee the projects actually get completed. So I think we want a little bit more. So what happens is if you come up to me and you say, hey, what are we getting for our money? We'd like to explain what you're getting for our money, because I think everyone understands that this is an old city and the pipes are 100-year plus. And if you say, hey, the infrastructure is being replaced on a schedule, then I can tell you what you're getting for your money. So I think that Councilman Mosby, I think when in the past when we spoke with utility commissions and going back to the enterprise funds, maybe you can concur that that was one of our concerns, that the projects moving forward were not just an increase in revenue. So, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Councilor Starbuck.
Melinda, what do we have right now in our unrestricted operating cash with this enterprise?
Apologize. It was part of the Utility Commission report for for the water fund. And sorry. The cash balance at July 1st, 2017 was 4.5 million.
4.5 million? Because what it says, we would need to have a 15% of 1.4, so that'd be 2.4. Okay.
So that's operating cost. And
No,
you're
understood.
I'm just want to say that when you have capital projects, you can put money aside for those particular projects.
No, gotcha. I just want to mention, I mean, you've covered it in your report also, but every time there's a unit increase, use decreases. Reminding council that the trickle-down effect on that is going to go to another enterprise, our wastewater at this time. So what we have done last time was the guaranteed rate of a meter increase. So don't be blinded here with confusing meters and units.
Yeah, if the increase happened just on the base unit, I mean, on the meter charge, that would be $5.41. So if you did the average of everybody for like a 10 units, you're talking about $20 per month increase. Just FYI, let you know.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'm going to open this up for public comment.
Good evening again, Council. John Lynn. First speaking on behalf of the Utility Commission. We voted 3-1 not to recommend the increase. Our chairman's wife is ill, so he wasn't able to attend. I don't know if you received the same document that we get, but if you do, I would call your attention to the bottom of page 3 and some other numbers that I pulled out. So I just want to talk about the reserve over time. In 2015, when we began this, our reserve was $100,000, keeping in mind that the goal is $2.4 million. At the end of fiscal 2016, our reserve was $1.1 million. At the end of fiscal year 17, our reserve was $4.5 million. And according to the last paragraph on page 3, as of December 31st, our reserve was $6.9 million. And then looking at the graph in the back, it looks like we would have about another $2+ million. So we probably have a reserve somewhere in the vicinity today, and again, we don't have those numbers, of about $7.9 million. We have a goal of $2.4 million, and if you'll recall, those of you who were here a long time ago, Brad wanted another $2.4 million for pipe replacement, so that if worst case scenario would be $5 million, and today we're probably sitting on $8 million. I can't think of a single reason why we want to raise people's rates when we have a whole bucket of money we haven't spent. And we don't have any projects scheduled. I had a nice little spreadsheet for you, but unfortunately I left it on my desk. I think, if I remember correctly, our capital improvement budget for water that was approved by the council is less than $380,000, but I don't have that number in front of me, so I apologize. So if, let's say it's 4, and you have a reserve goal of 2.4, that's 2.8, and we're sitting somewhere around 8. So I don't think that's quite triple, but it's certainly in the vicinity, and I can't think of a single reason personally to raise the rates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment, bring it back to the council. What's your desire? Anyone? Okay, well, I will make a motion to accept staff recommendation.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that fails, 3-2. Okay, so, okay, that's all we have to do on that. Did you want to provide any alternate direction, or just Councilmember Mosby?
Yeah, I'd be willing to make a motion, granted, with Joe's got to bring it back next time and such, but nothing? We're okay?
We don't need to bring this back.
Okay. Well, I would, because we've already done the 218 study, and we have money invested in it, and I know that there are potential capital projects down the list that are out there. And since we already have this on the table, I think it would be prudent to bring it back next year and to look at it again and see. But I can say that we are in very good shape right now. I do know that there were some long-term well potentials being drilled, but they were looking at 2 and 4 and 6 years out. But to save us from having to do, I mean, what does a 218 study cost approximately? You got to go to the microphone.
Sorry. So it was about 50,000 with mailing out everything and staff time.
So to keep this on the books and bring it back next year with other numbers and stuff, do you think that'd be a good idea?
I'm not sure I understand what's being asked to be brought back. The study that was done in 2013-14 gave us the authority to raising rates over a 5-year period.
Okay.
We're not raising the rate. We didn't raise the rate last year. We're not going to raise the rate again this year.
Okay.
And so whatever happens in the next year, the rate will be as it is today, unless there's a study that could authorize increases, and we go through the 218 process and all that.
Very good. Never mind then.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we're going to move on to item number 11. And this is not Miss Wall. Where is Dirk? Oh, there he is, okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, citizens. Dirk Ishawada, Facilities Fleet Park Maintenance Manager. And I would like to request the rescission of the previous covenant with the Furniture Mart of Lompoc for the public parking and private property.
Okay, I guess this has been in effect for probably 20 plus years?
Since 1975.
75, okay, that's 20 plus, yeah. And it's actually, right now, it's costing us more than what the revenue we're receiving?
That is correct.
Yeah. And the owner of the property would like us to consider rescinding it?
That is correct. They put the request into me asking to rescind the original contract, the agreement.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Ishwada? Seeing no questions, thank you. We'll open this up for public comment. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close public comment, bring back to the council. Councilman Osborne.
I recommend that we accept the rescission of previous covenant with the Furniture Mart of Lompoc for public parking on private property.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, that includes 1 and 2. Okay. Any discussion? Let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Okay, thank you. Item number 12 has been pulled for a future date. So right now we're going to move on to written communications.
Nothing more than you've already received.
Okay. Oral communications. It's your opportunity to speak to us for up to 2 minutes on any item that can come before this council. Seeing no one rise, we're going to close oral communication, bring back to the council for council requests, comments, and meeting reports. We'll start with Councilmember Vega.
I'd like to say the Flower Festival turned out great. The parade was wonderful. 4th of July also. Went down to the stadium, Houck Stadium, and I applaud the firefighters and all the city staff that actually were included in that endeavor, because it was really nice. I'm glad we went. The other thing I'd like to do here, I'm going to step outside the box here and make a council recommendation that we actually bring this chicken ordinance back for reconsideration another time. I think I've been approached by many people not just the comments tonight, which I appreciate, but there's a lot of people out there that I didn't realize are pretty passionate about this. I think everybody was getting confused with the roosters versus the chickens, and then someone had to educate me to tell me, hey, you know, there's a difference, okay? So I'd like to make a council request that we at least bring this back for consideration because of the public input and the comments I've received. So anyway, that's my request.
Okay. Councilmember Mosby?
I'd give you a second.
I'll give you a third.
Okay, so it'll be coming back. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Vega?
No, thanks for being here.
Councilmember Osborne?
I concur with Councilmember Vega that both the Flower Festival and the fireworks event were very well done. I want to thank all the volunteers in both groups that worked on it, as well as our staff for the Parks and Rec, because I know they're stretched thin. So thank you for doing a great job with the 4th. I attended the District 1 election info session back in June, the League of California Cities, Mayors, and Executive Forum in Monterey, which the city did pay for my attendance. I also attended the League of California Cities Channel County dinner this past Friday, and I was at Old Town Market with Victor on the 6th, and I will be there this Friday with Councilmember Starbuck. Please come out. It focuses on the city of Lompoc. And last but not least, the application window for District 2, District 3 for city council member positions, as well as the mayor, opened on Monday. If you are interested in running for council and want more details, please talk to our city clerk, Stacy Haddon. Call her, make an appointment, email her. She will inform you how to go about the process and give you all the paperwork. I welcome anyone to the challenge. Thank you.
Hey, Bob, if you wouldn't mind, one more comment. I'd like to give a shout out to our driver on Flower Festival, Mr. Dan Petrie. I told him, hey, he was a great sport, keeping me entertained the whole time. So I wanted to say thank you, Dan.
Okay, Councilmember Mosby.
I represented the city of Lompoc at Santa Barbara County Association Government meeting in June, as well as the APCD meeting, the Air Pollution Control District meeting, as well as this month, the sub-regional Santa Barbara County Association of Government meeting, as well as manned the Old Town booth as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I have no reports. I'm looking forward to our discussion on birds and roosters later, and thank you.
Okay. Let's see. I attended many meetings, but there's only 2 that involve city money. On June 27th, 28th, I attended a Northern California Power Association meeting in Alameda. The city did pay for a one-night hotel stay for me. I drove my own vehicle. They paid the mileage. And then on this Friday, I also attended the League of California Cities meeting up in the Pismo area, and the city did pay for my dinner there. And that is it. So if we have nothing else, this meeting is adjourned to a regular city council meeting at 6:30 p.m., August 7th, 2018. Thank you and good night.